Hello, welcome to Board Gems. In this video I'd like to compare, it's a Leo Colovini game that was originally published in 2002 by Winning Moves and Venice Connection called Clans. In 2018 it got a remake from Z-Man Games called Fae. And here are the two editions. The Clans game is the Winning Moves / Venice Connection game. It's a standard Winning Moves size box, kind of a smallish square box. And Fae, this is a pretty standard size for Z-Man. Pandemic is in exactly the same box format. The original had a single picture and a wall of text. It's a trilingual edition, so they have to fit a lot of text on there. And it's just intended to be like, well, this is sort of the game and how it looks and how you might feel when you play it. You get a vibe. But in the newer edition, Fae, they actually kind of walk you through this is sort of how the game plays. Obviously a much simpler version of that. The new version says 20 minutes, the old says 30. From my experience, I think 30 is closer to accurate, just my experience. And both editions say 10 and up. It's a very simple game, 8 and ups can definitely play. There's not much to show inside the box. It's a pretty simple cardboard insert. And again, this cardboard insert is pretty standard for Z-Man and their pandemic style of games. So it has a little section for the cards, as opposed to one big well in the Winning Moves games. Comparing rulebooks, the original was surprisingly long considering how simple a game Clans is. They go into a lot of detail, which is good. It answers all your questions, although at first glance, people could look at it and go, oh, this looks a little complicated. So you can see in Fae, they kind of simplified, they added a lot of white space and a little bit larger text. And it's a pretty short rule book. So you definitely don't feel like it's too complicated when you pick it up and flip through it. Anyway, if you look at the board, at first glance, the original looks larger, and that's because it has the sort of scoring guide as printed as part of the board, whereas it's separated as cards in the new edition. I'll show you that later. Even factoring that in, the old board is still a little bit larger than the new. You see it has a score track around half of the board. So you can see here the one board laying on top of the other. Even when you factor in kind of the scoring area on one side of the old board, it is still larger than the new one. If we zoom into one corner, you can kind of see that it's a little bit shrunk overall, but not much. It is an exact one-to-one mapping. So the grassland in the original maps to the weird wormy mountains, the purple wormy mountains. And what were the mountains in the old are now mushroom forests. I have to say, I love the detail in the new board. And they certainly stand out well enough. You could argue that in the original, the plains and the, I don't know what they call them, the steppes, anyway, the yellow and the green, the light green, are a little bit too similar, and they don't have very strong borders. That's not a problem in the new, but the new board is very busy. So to describe the scoring briefly, you score points for every village that you form, and depending on at what time the village is formed, different areas of the board, different terrain types are going to score differently. So the first 4 villages that are scored will score bonus points if they are on forest, but they will not score bonus points if they are on mountain. Mountains are bad. And you'll see that there's a progression there printed on the board. The way the new edition does it is there's 10 cards. And at first glance you might think, oh, that adds for some variety because you can, mix up the cards, maybe have a different order or something. Nope. It's exactly the same. The number 1 first, you can barely see the numbers on them. The number 1 doesn't even look like a 1. It just looks like part of the logo design there on the card. The original had tokens, and when you score the village, when you create the village, you take 1 token, and that's worth 1 point at the end of the game. With the cards, and the player who forms the village simply takes the card. But I will say, if you look at the cards, and you see the top part of the card this is the terrain that will score for any villages formed now. The bottom one, that's in a little bit smaller kind of rectangle there, that's the bad terrain. Villages formed in that terrain will not score. much, if anything. Those terrains on the bottom, I find they're quite hard to make out. They don't show the color very strongly. Instead, they focus on the style of artwork that terrain uses. And it works, but it doesn't stand out as well as I'd like. At the beginning of the game, players will get a random color, and that's the color that they're going to score this game. In the original, they were cardboard tiles. Worked fine. I have to imagine that colorblind people might have a problem with that, since the artwork is exactly the same except for colors. And in the new edition, you have these cards, which in my case I've sleeved, one for each of the 5 colors. Green has been replaced with purple. And now it has this artwork to differentiate, but this artwork isn't used anywhere else. So I'm not sure how easy it is for a colorblind person to be able to remember that, oh, this goat-like creature is this color on the board, because these colors match up to the tokens. The original used wooden huts and wooden discs. The new uses plastic discs and plastic, I suppose, druids is what they are. But again, they're all the same shape, which is reasonable, especially for, plastic mold. You don't want 5 different plastic molds, would add to the price of the game. I'm not colorblind. I do wonder whether this is very effective for colorblind people, because although the cards have artwork differentiating the different colors, that doesn't help you differentiate the colors of the druids. But I'm not colorblind, maybe I'm off base. These 5 colors mixed in with the colors on the board make for quite an assault of the senses. I personally prefer the understated colors of the original, but I guess you could complain about that too, right? There's yellow and green on the board, and there's yellow and green on the as player colors. I'm just old, but you knew that already. Thanks for watching. Older games like Clans and Fae don't stop being good because newer games come out. Take care.